On the tube and the Green Line bus going back to Cheshunt, I was on cloud nine. We had just made a rock and roll record, our own rock and roll record. The recording of Move It had gone incredibly well, but Norrie had still chosen Schoolboy Crush as the A-side of our first single. I'd still been a schoolboy only a year earlier, so I guess he thought it was apt. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I wouldn't have dared suggest an alternative plan to the mighty Mr. Paramore. Thankfully, somebody else who was about to get inextricably involved in my story was a lot more confident and a lot more powerful. Jack Good was a young TV producer who had launched the BBC's pop show 6-5 Special in 1957 and was now working on a similar imminent show for ITV called Oh Boy. He also did some pop writing, notably as a columnist on music magazine Disc, and got given a copy of our debut single. Jack was indifferent towards Schoolboy Crush, but absolutely loved Move It, and went to town about it in his Disc column. He compared it to Elvis. Goodness me, I think I need to sit down. And Jerry Lee Lewis, and raved that it was the handiwork of a 17-year-old boy from Cheshunt. The mind just boggles. Jack Good could not have been more positive about Clff Richard and the Drifters, but he also did something even more important than write nice things about us in the magazine. He booked us to appear on the first episode of Oh Boy. The appearance came with one major stipulation. I liked this band, but if they are coming on my show, they are not playing Schoolboy Crush, he informed Norrie Paramore. Move It is their best song. They are doing that or nothing. Norrie was no fool, and he wasn't going to lose a precious TV slot. He agreed. Crikey, I could not believe that we were going to go on the telly and play our own song. It was mind-boggling, impossible to take in. But Jack Good made sure that we didn't get carried away and were focused on the task in hand. In fact, he worked us to within an inch of our lives. The show was to be live from the Hackney Empire, and we had to prepare for it for a full week in a rehearsal room in nearby Islington. Jack may have liked our debut single, or at least one side of it, but he also knew we were novices. So he had a good hard look at our act, and he didn't like some of what he saw. Jack Good twigged pretty much straight away that at that point I was basically an Elvis Presley tribute act. Well, he didn't want an Elvis impersonator on his show, a fact that he made clear to me in very direct language. Look, you're not Elvis Presley, he told me. You may want to be, but you're not, so you can shave those sideburns off for a start. And put down your guitar, you don't need it, so just concentrate on your singing. My first reaction was horror. Oh no, my sideburns, my guitar. And yet, I didn't argue with him. Jack Good clearly knew television and music inside out. Plus, he had charisma and a drive and conviction that were very compelling. I could tell at once that he knew what he was doing. In short, I trusted him. In any case, his feedback to me wasn't all negative. Over that week in Islington, Jack gave me detailed, step-by-step instructions on how I should move on stage, how I should sing, how I should dance, how I should stand. He gave an awkward 17-year-old boy a crash course in how to become a rock and roll star. Clff, hold your left shoulder with your right hand when you sing this line, Jack would say. Look straight into the camera lens for this part. Keep your feet still, but turn your body sideways. Now, run across the stage from this side to that. Look up to the balconies. Concentrate, and don't try to be Elvis. It was a lot to take in, but I was an enthusiastic student and very keen to learn. That week in Islington was grueling, and I could not have been more nervous before Oh Boy debuted on the 13th of September 1958. But it went well, and when I saw the show back, I realized that everything Jack had taught me had worked. He had shown me how to be a performer. He had shown me how to find me. That first television appearance altered everything for me. The day after we played Move It on Oh Boy, I was public property. I couldn't walk down the street without people, girls, running up to me, wanting a chat, an autograph, and a kiss on the cheek. My whole life changed overnight. How did I feel about it? What do you think? I absolutely loved it. It felt like, no, it was everything I had wanted ever since I heard Elvis, discovered rock and roll and fallen in love with the idea of being a singer. As I said in my memoir, I had a dream, and that dream came true. And now I was ready to live it. For a few days after Oh Boy, my record company was still saying that Schoolboy Crush was the A-side of the single. It didn't last. Move It was the song everyone was going crazy for, and Norrie Paramore bowed to the inevitable. Okay, let's flip it over. Ta-da! Move It was now the A-side. I'd never have dared ask him directly to do it, but I was so pleased when he did. If Schoolboy Crush had been my first hit, I would have been seen as just one more cover artist. Instead, Clff Richard and the Drifters had arrived doing fresh, brand new material, and it set the tone for what was to follow. I'll never forget seeing and holding my first copy of Move It. The center label was green, with white lettering on it. It came in a plain black sleeve, and it's remarkable. Even 65 years on, I can still remember the catalog number. I don't even need to check it. It was 45 DB 4178. You could buy Move It on 78 RPM 10-inch shellac or 45 RPM 7-inch vinyl. It's a sign of how long ago it came out that stereo recordings, or stereo sound as it was still known then, were still newfangled technology. I saw copies of Move It where the sleeve said, also available in stereo. Move It is the record that made me. I'll talk later in this book about how it rose and rose up the hit parade, week after week, coming to rest at number 2. But its importance is bound up in far more than mere chart positions. It's still, even today, acknowledged to be the first British rock and roll single. It's an amazing thing to have on my career CV and as my legacy. I've never seen its claim to that status challenged or disputed. When John Lennon famously said, "Before Clff and Move It, there was nothing worth listening to in British music," I felt incredibly moved and proud. How could I not? What a compliment. Yes, Move It was the first original British rock and roll song written by a Brit and sung by a Brit, and nothing and nobody can ever take that away from me. There's a funny P.S. to the story of Move It. Almost 40 years later, in 1995, Hank Marvin was recording an album of my songs called Hank Plays Clff. He asked me to sing Move It with him on the record, and we had an idea. Shall we finally add that second verse that we never got around to doing at the time? We managed to track down Ian Samwell, who was by then living in California. Ian loved the idea and wrote a second verse, including the line, "Fireflies in the night and bullfrogs croaking." Well, as I say, he was living in California. Hank and I had a load of fun recording this new, longer version for his album. Bruce Welch has always been a musical purist. He's never liked me singing this second verse. It's wrong, because Move It didn't have that verse when it was a hit, he complains. Brucey, I reply, it was always meant to have a second verse. We just got rushed and didn't have time to do it. I have played Move It at virtually every show I've done since 1958. Occasionally, I wonder if I should give it a rest every now and then. I remember many years ago putting a band together for an American tour and mentioning in rehearsals that I was thinking of leaving Move It off the set list. Well, the band was horrified. "Oh no, Clff," they said, "we've got to do Move It. We really want to play it. And it wouldn't be a Clff Richard show without it." And you know what? I think they're right. I'll carry on playing Move It live until the day that I get bored of playing it or the fans don't want to hear it anymore. And I think that I might know exactly when that will be. Never.